France is once again in political turmoil after Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu resigned just 27 days into his tenure, leaving the country to appoint its 8th Prime Minister in 5 years. This unprecedented instability is raising questions about governance and France's role in the European Union. Analysts say the rapid turnover of prime ministers reflects deep political divisions in France's parliament and society. The ongoing uncertainty also poses risks to the French economy and could ripple across the wider European Union, affecting markets and policy planning. From Berlin, DW's Arthur Sullivan explains the drivers of France's political crisis and what it could mean for Europe.
So this instability all goes back to the fateful decision made last summer by the French President Emmanuel Macron to call snap parliamentary elections. So just a quick explainer on the French political system. In that system, the President and the Parliament are separate. They're elected in separate elections. There's the executive branch of the President, the legislative branch of the Parliament. But last summer, Macron got spooked by the strong and increasingly strong performance of his great rival, Marine Le Pen's right-wing National Front Party. They performed well in European elections, and in the aftermath of that, he decided to call sudden parliamentary elections, and he very clearly cast them as a decisive vote for the French people to either give his centrist coalition in Parliament a clearer mandate or to fully embrace the right. But the thing is, in a divided country and a divided parliament, neither of those things happened, and the election left the parliament even more divided than it was before, with no one bloc strong enough to govern. And so since then, there's been this instability. 4 different prime ministers, soon to be 5. Budgets have not been passed. Legislative progress has been almost impossible. Disagreements over government formation, disagreements over small things, a lack of cohesion, and in effect, chaos has been reigning in the French political system. Well, all this political instability means that France is simply not in a position to deal with some serious underlying fundamental fiscal problems. So the bottom line, France is in debt, big time. Now, culturally, it has never been famed for balancing its budgets, and certainly not under the presidency of Emmanuel Macron. It's gotten more pronounced under him since he took office in 2017. Government spending has been increasing dramatically, and yet with tax cuts, the government hasn't been taking in enough to try and match that spending. And so its budget deficit keeps getting bigger. And as well as that, France now has the 3rd highest debt to GDP ratio in Europe, which is a typical measure of a country's debt relative to its growth. But it's not only not getting dealt with, it's actually getting worse. So ratings agencies are warning about the risks of the country that's so big, with such a big economy, in this kind of debt. French borrowing costs are going up, and there is growing anxiety about just how unprepared France would be to deal with a potential financial crisis, and how contagion could arise in the event of a debt crisis. Now, memories are still very fresh across the EU of the euro sovereign debt crisis, which happened in the aftermath of the global financial crisis in the early 2010s. And when you've got an economy as big as France's is in this position, then obviously the whole EU has reason to worry, because if things got bad in France, they would very quickly get bad elsewhere. Well, what's been happening for the past year is that they've been muddling on. So it is possible, of course, that a new government will be named, a new prime minister will be named, there won't be fresh elections, and they'll just keep sort of lurching forward to the next crisis. But in reality, that's all just a sticking plaster. What France needs, clearly, is a stable government capable of actually dealing with its debt and fiscal issues, of reforming them, and ideally one that works in lockstep with the president. But what's happening as this instability goes on and as the president becomes more undermined, it's benefiting that right-wing National Front, who clearly lead opinion polls, not just for the parliament elections, but also for the next presidential election. Now, they would obviously not work well with Macron in parliament. They're diametrically opposed politically, but they claim they would bring stability. Now, of course, their supporters heartily believe that, but many would argue strongly with that across France, as although they are the leading party in opinion polls, they're also wildly unpopular across the country, and many see them as a divisive political force. Now, as for Macron, his term doesn't end as president until May 2027. It's hard to see how he would be leaving before that. But politicians across the political divide, not just from the right wing, but including some of his allies, have actually said there should be a presidential election much sooner than 2027 to try and resolve this crisis. And if Macron can't forge a stable government soon, that pressure and that talk about early elections is only going to grow.